Welcome to the Cincy Postcast presented by Gold Star, your winning team off the pitch. I'm Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about our friends over at Streetside Brewery. Yes, that is right. Streetside Brewery, one of the best Cincinnati breweries you will find out there over on the east side in the Columbia Tusculum neighborhood. They are doing some great stuff over there. If you have not checked them out, please do. You owe it to yourself. They have so many, dare I say, every type of beer on their tap list. They are so good at this. They have mad scientists working in the back there, and they have mastered what appears to be every single type of beer. I've got two recommendations for you right now. One, don't call this self-serving. It is the Cincy Shirt-Faced New England IPA. You gotta support our friends over at Cincy Shirts. It's also a very good beer. And then also, Scars Are Beautiful. Again, another New England IPA that they did in collaboration to honor Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And they have a really beautiful can that beer goes in. So you got to go check them out. And hey, when you check them out in the tap room, mention the postcast and they'll knock $1 off of your beer. Not a bad deal there. So a huge thank you to Streetside for sponsoring this episode. And thank you, listener, for using that code next time you go in. And on today's episode, well, we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to one Luciano Acosta. Lucho is out here saying things, and so we are here to decipher them. Okay, what happened at Media Day with FCC? What happened with ESPN Argentina? Okay, there's a lot to dive into with this one. We also hit on a couple of other FC Cincinnati news and tidbits, but in part two, it is all the Gold Star shining moment of the season, which is really exciting. We get to relive some great moments from this season. We wrap it all up with Patreon questions, put it all together. And baby, we're in the off season. All right, joining me to talk about all of that and more, I'm joined finally together again by two gentlemen that are ready to spill some tea, or I guess read the tea leaves that have been spilled. I think that's how you carry that one through. Joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. Chief, it is 9:20 p.m. at time of recording. When's the last time you went to sleep?
It's been a minute.
One whole minute?
It's been a minute. Yeah, it has been one whole minute because I was on the couch like half asleep when my phone went off and said we had to record tonight. No, the joys of time zone traveling. So I think I mentioned it last episode. I was off, left the day after the election to go to a wedding that a friend was having in a much more remote location than we currently live in Cincinnati. And that was, look, if you're trying to run away from problems in your life a little bit, I highly recommend attending a wedding on the Big Island of Hawaii. It's a great way to not have to deal with the consequences of, an election, a soccer season ending, whatever it is that's going on. You can certainly run away and everything feels better when you're on an island. The only downside, and it's like there are a lot of things in life that'll make you feel better for a moment. Then there's a come down. And in this case, it was 2 plane rides, a 5-hour layover in Seattle. And this episode's going to be fun. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm delirious right now. So how you guys been?
Right, so we're back to normal.
We're back to normal.
Finally.
We don't know what we're talking about.
The we're back department. I'd like to file a claim. Congratulations to Eric and Angie, though. It was a lovely ceremony. Neither one of them listened to this, but
perfect.
Eric and Angie Trump.
Yeah. There were a non-insignificant number of flags flying on the island. I'll put it out that way. But
interesting.
Yeah.
Chief, is it legal to buy a one-way plane ticket to Hawaii?
You know, I was thinking about that. Like, you would think no,
right?
But it is America, and like it's legal to buy a one-way plane ticket anywhere else in this country. But yeah, like I would think, you know what they still make you do? They still make you fill out a paper that like declares if you're carrying any fruits, vegetables, or any organic material with you, because they're trying to keep a lid on invasive species. So they don't want you carrying like a pack of seeds of like kudzu or something like that, or, you know, something that'll otherwise upset the delicate natural balance and natural beauty that they sell as a tourism industry. But they still make you fill this form out on paper with pen.
Good.
So they bring out these forms on the aircraft, and they're passing out these forms that you have to fill out, you know, by hand, and then no pens. So we are encouraged to try and find other people on the plane who, in the year of our Lord 2024, are still bringing pens
onto the airplane,
onto the aircraft with them. So,
which is funny because you think in an era of overly aggressive TSA, you'd just be in the habit of not carrying something that could, you know, be pointy and sharp or
anything. Like, I'm not going to carry a single thing I don't need with me through TSA and give them another reason to search my bag. Like, just not going to do it. I'm going to carry the bare minimum number of things with me onto this flight. Take the bare minimum number of things with me.
And so as someone who,
Grayson,
as someone who generally, from a political standpoint, wants to just abolish like states, I do appreciate like local state flavor and like the weird idiosyncrasies that you get like from state to state. Like you go to Oregon, and in some counties you can't pump your own gas, right? Like they'll run out and they'll stop you from doing it.
They won't let you do
it. In Hawaii, I remember the first time I went, it was a while ago. I was so confused the first time I tried to fill up a gas tank because they didn't have like the little groove that stops the trigger.
Oh,
so I had to like, I went to the gas station. I had to like hold the thing the entire time until it stopped, until the suction caused it to stop. And I remember going on like a Reddit thread trying to figure out if this was like a thing all around Hawaii or just like one gas station. And I found it was like a thing like all over Hawaii. Like you have to hold the gas pump like in the car. And people were like, what's going on here? And people from Hawaii were so defensive about it. They were like, well, because we don't want you causing a fire by being on your phone while you're waiting for the gas to pump. I'm like, that's all right, man.
Right.
But also like, you know what? Fair enough.
Yeah, cool. No, but it's very
similar. You want me to declare what I got? You want me to run my pineapples through the when I'm leaving through the scanner? You want me to put my bag on a treadmill for like no fucking reason before I like can then go check it for my flight?
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Like if we're gonna have states, like let them be weird in fun ways versus like weird in like the dark ways that seem to be most prominent.
The gas one is always very funny to me because I had family. My dad's family is from North Jersey. So growing up, we used to go to New Jersey where you're not allowed to pump your own gas. And I was always fascinated by how they keep this going and how they rationalize it, because it's not like outside of New Jersey or outside of Hawaii in this instance, there's just this rash of people spontaneously combusting at gas stations or vehicle fires at gas stations such that a trained professional must handle this.
Right.
And thank you, government of New Jersey, Oregon, or Hawaii, from stopping us from the scourge of people handling their own gasoline. It's like, That never happens at all. Like maybe back like in the 50s and the 60s, you could like, oh, everyone knew or had heard of one person who, they were pumping their own gas and created a static spark with their clothing. And oh my God, the entire family burned to a crisp. How awful they let other people do this. It's like, man, that just doesn't happen anymore. Like the internet would tell me immediately if it was for some reason unsafe to pump your own gas, or there was this rash of fires being caused by the little notch that allows you to just like, click the pump open and allow it to fill itself up. That just doesn't happen. I appreciate they're on the Reddit thread arguing this, that, oh, we don't want you burning our island down. But like, you got to show your work a little bit that happens elsewhere,
right,
where this thing happens. And you also have to show your work in that, like, I'm driving around and there are entire fields of just nothing but rocks because fire comes up from underground where you live. That seems to be a way bigger problem in terms of fire than what you do with the gas tank. Like, that makes sense. But let's worry about that and not the little notch doohickey that lets you, give your hand a break for 30 seconds while filling up with some unleaded gasoline.
I once watched I forget what bowl it was, but I was in the North Shore of Oahu, and I watched an Ohio State Clemson bowl game at the Turtle Bay Resort. And Ohio State lost, I think, 28-0.
Good.
But the nice thing was when the game was over, the sun was still out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like 4 lava flows deep.
Yeah.
But the sun was still out.
Hell yeah.
So the bottom line was I did watch the FC Cincinnati game, which was how I was able to comment on things. But then after that loss, I made the executive decision. You know what? I'm not going to sit in a bar and watch the Buccaneers the next day. I'm going to go do something productive with my time, and I'll just find out like what happened. And I suspect that's just how it starts in Hawaii. And that's how you just stop caring. It's like, I'm not going to spend my Sunday morning, in a bowling alley watching NFL games. I'm going to go and I'm going to do something productive with my time. But
or just more leisurely,
Yeah. It is a haul to get there, and time zones are a motherfucker. So
sorry, it was 31-0.
Oh, good.
There we go.
That was the point a lot of people were going to correct you on.
Yeah. And I do remember what year it was because 3 days later I got engaged.
There you go. Just think sliding doors moment. If they had won, maybe your life was completely different.
Yeah. Were you there for the purpose of getting engaged?
Yes and no. I was planning to get engaged.
Okay.
We had friends who were going to Oahu and invited us to join. So what we decided to do was go for the latter half of their week in Oahu and then do like a few days in Kauai on our own. And then I decided that in the portion of time in Kauai was when it was going to happen.
Perfect.
But I did give our friends a heads up that I was gonna do that. I was like, just so you know, I know you guys are like inviting us on this trip.
I'm hijacking the shit out of this.
Yeah. Not to make this about me, but gonna make this about me.
Yeah. And it was a whole thing.
Ends in marriage. It gets real messy.
Romantic, but messy.
Well, hey, speaking of romantic, but messy, folks, we got to talk about this. Lucho Acosta is, I think, trying to publicly break up with FC Cincinnati. I don't know how else to describe this. If people would like to challenge my characterization of this, I am fine with it. following his comments post game, which we did dive into thoroughly last episode, although Chief, you got to touch on it briefly, so I don't want to stop you from sharing some thoughts here, but things were supposed to get a little more clarity today. So this was the sort of, they call it exit interviews, which I always find like concerning because it sounds like every player they're going to interview is leaving the team, which is not quite how it works, but we're sort of leaving the season. Here's the final round of interviews from a bunch of players, and usually Pat Noonan or somebody will speak. And Lucho Acosta was scheduled to be one of these players, and he ended up not speaking to local press. He spoke to, I think it was ESPN Argentina, and shared some thoughts. But
it was very funny. It was very funny when originally,
yes,
the story from the team came out that he had a family commitment, and
which fair enough. We knew things had been rocky. Good.
They said a family obligation.
Yeah,
and then Pat Brennan had a tweet later, maybe others did too, that he had to make a quote like prior commitment.
Right.
And I always think this kind of thing is very funny because they like to think that they can control like every bit of information that comes out. So like the things that are released at the outset of like stuff like flowing,
right,
are always like funny.
Yeah.
And it makes the reaction to like when the real story comes out like that much worse.
Yeah.
I thought about today actually something that happened when I was in first grade.
Going back.
If you'll indulge me.
Please connect these dots for me.
One time when I was in first grade, I learned a very important lesson. So I went to the restroom in class and like kind of, wasted time, whatever. And then had the idea that'd be very funny to just like keep pushing the soap dispenser until there was like a massive puddle of soap on the floor of the bathroom.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then while I was doing it, one of the custodians walked into the restroom and saw me doing it.
No.
Okay. So then I had to go to the principal's office, and the principal told me, okay, I'm going to give you a note. You have to give it to your parent, and you have to bring back like $1 for the soap and a note from your parents about how you're going to work the $1 off.
Ooh, okay.
So I went back and I had a couple of dollars in my room in a bubblegum tin, and I grabbed $1 and I took a piece of paper and I wrote in my first grade handwriting,
was totally going to pass.
Grayson will do the dishes. and put it in my backpack with the $1.
Brilliant.
And this was brilliant plan.
Yeah.
It's going to work.
No flaws here at all.
Until, but what I hadn't thought about was that I had a tendency of not taking stuff the school gave me, like permission slips and things, to my parents.
Yeah.
So my mom had developed a habit of looking in my backpack every day. And she found the note and she's like, what is this? And so like I had to explain it. And then my mom wrote on the note
Oh no.
in her handwriting what would happen. It made me take the note with like my handwriting
Like your
and her handwriting. Yes. So it'd be very obvious what had happened.
Proof of the cover up.
Right. And what I learned from that thing is that you think that like you can control the flow of information, but when you can't control the flow of information, it always comes out much worse than if you had just kind of
just
like,
rolled with it. Yeah.
rolled with it and put your side out. Right.
Right.
And so I think like FC Cincinnati still needs to learn, like stop trying to like write your own note, you know? Like,
it's so funny in this case because really what FC Cincinnati was trying to do was cover for Lucho.
Yeah.
Lucho had
he didn't want to
something
be covered for.
he is going, the thing he's going to is him saying, I want the fuck out. Oh no, he's just not feeling well. Meanwhile, the boyfriend is, drafting
Like,
the breakup
like, no,
text.
I feel fine. I just don't want to be here. It's like, yeah, it's like we've all been there where it's like your significant other covers for you with the in-laws. Oh, he's not feeling well, or he had way too much work going on, and then all of a sudden there's a social media post or a Facebook post of you clearly not at the family pumpkin carving or whatever it is that you just didn't want to do.
Would know nothing about that.
Would nothing. No, that perished the thought. All right, I'm going to spin zone this right here. I think it's a very good thing that he wasn't at media day today. And the spin on, or the reasoning for why he wasn't there, that's funny. And again, it's Grayson's point of it's 2024. I understand that people that do PR, like, look, believe me, I understand that people who do PR, you have a job to do, and you have, to put your organization and put things in the best possible light. And, you're always trying to make sure that you're receiving favorable coverage, that, that you don't want certain things being talked about in a certain way. But you got to admit that, like, in this day and age, it's really hard to pull the wool over the eyes of people. And not only is it really hard to pull the wool over their eyes, especially when you're only in control of one half of the possible flow of information. Like, it'd be one thing if you were trying to tamp down a story from inside your building and you can spin it however you want, and that will be the only thing the media hears about is this version right here. Mm-hmm. But like, there's a whole nother dude here who would need to be going along with whatever, who clearly shows no desire right now to go along with whatever. But I tend to look at it like this. So I really didn't weigh in on this because, we had a limited amount of time that I had to throw some thoughts together for the last episode of the show. Whatever you think is going on with Lucho Acosta, and there's a certain amount of wag stuff to it that we don't like to talk about on this show, just because I think it's, quite frankly, I think it's counterproductive. And I think that there's way too much innuendo and rumor, and nobody knows what the real story is. And I, for one, we've talked about this off the air, but I, for one, don't feel comfortable engaging in that type of speculation about the personal lives of players. Not until it becomes a situation like an Aaron Bupen's situation where someone is reporting that something has happened and there's more to go on than just, I heard that, or there's chatter online that about something that a player is going through. I'm not interested in that because that's wrong as much as it is right.
I just, on that point, I do want to say something that, like, to that effect, we have heard things. Absolutely. I've heard very contradictory things. So if we had just ran with the first thing we had heard, it could be totally wrong. So that's the other side of this, is like, it's not even like we're consistently hearing the same rumors. I've heard completely contradictory information through this. So,
and we've heard contradictory information from sources that like honestly, like, I would be inclined to think like, there's no reason that this person would be wrong about this. Right. Other than the fact that like somebody else who I would also say that about said something irreconcilable.
Yeah, like literally the exact opposite. Both things can't be true. There's no weird way to wiggle your way through it. Yeah.
Right. And like, not to dive into this point, but like, the very simple thing is that, like, look, there is rumor and speculation and about the status of Lucho Acosta's marriage. And during the course of this summer, we heard individuals on this podcast, I think all three of us at some point, all heard both that she was in the United States, Lucho's wife, and wasn't in the United States, all at the same time.
Yeah.
From people, and saw her at the stadium like the day after hearing she was not in the U.S.
Yeah. Or in the U.S., but not in Cincinnati. So there's three distinct locations she was allegedly at the same time.
And so like it became very difficult to know what was going on. And like beyond the grossness of getting into other people's personal affairs when unless they're taking pains to make their personal life, or unless they're making an effort to make their personal life part of their story. Like, I don't know that I would feel comfortable talking about DeAndre Yedlin's marriage, but I mean, at the very least, DeAndre Yedlin has felt comfortable making his family and his kids part of the story and part of the narrative that he is telling. For other players like Lucho,
I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about that beyond the fact of taking a picture off Instagram and saying like, look how cute DeAndre Yedlin's family is.
Right.
That's the extent of it.
I wouldn't feel comfortable either, but like even to that like level, like DeAndre's put his family out there a little bit. I don't think that makes them fair game, but it certainly makes them slightly more fair game than a player like, Lucho Acosta, where does not feature his wife on his Instagram stories or his kids on his Instagram stories that often. It's not like they're talking about him. They are not public figures as well. So beyond just having contradictory information about this, it's kind of gross, which is why we don't get into it. But all that, aside, that there's obviously a lot going on here. And he goes on after the game on Saturday and gives his thoughts, which you guys touched on the episode. And depending on who you read in MLS circles and where you think they're getting their information from, a lot of people felt blindsided by what he was saying there.
Yeah.
There's some takes. I think Matt Doyle had something this week about how there's a perception in the locker room and there's a perception elsewhere that the team is actually bending over backwards to accommodate Lucho Acosta, contrary to some of the comments that he made. All this being said, that like I don't think anyone was prepared for him to say what he said.
Right.
And I think the worst thing you could do for this situation is put another microphone in front of him locally and have reporters asking like pointed questions about what his stance is, because like they don't need this situation to get more contentious. Like this is like they have Lucho Acosta under contract for 2025 and 2026. He is a central part of what this team does. He is a central part of this team's identity. He's the captain of the team. This team has been built around the idea of how Lucho Acosta plays. And whether you think he's going to be here or not going forward, the club has made a significant financial investment in Lucho, and it stands to reason that they're going to want to try and work this out. And like the minute you put another microphone in front of him, in front of local reporters that are looking for a story and chasing a story, it just is another opportunity for something to be said that can't be unsaid, or something that something to be said that ruffles feathers that are impossible to unruffle at a certain point. And like the best thing for this club right now, honestly, is get Lucho away from the media, let this story die down a little bit, and just like go through whatever the healing process is or the conversation of, all right, why do you feel this way? And work it out behind closed doors instead of out in the court of public opinion. So I think it's a good thing that this whatever the reason was, I think it's great that he wasn't available for media today. Would I have loved to hear more? Yeah, but as an FC Cincinnati fan, like as a person that needs content from the podcast,
there you go.
Yes, I want more content. But as someone who wants Lucho Acosta playing on this team in 2025 and who has no faith whatsoever that this team is going to find another playmaker like Lucho Acosta on the open market, I would rather that this, whatever time needs to be taken, is taken fixing this versus trading barbs in public.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to table whether Lucho should be in front of microphones in front of the media or not for a second. Because I think it's a little more, it revealed itself to be a little more complicated than we like learned. But we talked about on Monday's episode this whole thing about, how the team dealt with players that moved on or whatever. I mean,
yeah,
there's not much you can really like. That feels like a very lame excuse.
Yeah,
for frustration, based on what we talked about on Monday and what we know about the team. The other point that I want to make is
but before you make your next point, though, on that point, there are still people in this fan base, and I was seeing this on the Bird app this week, who don't fully understand why. Like, well, why did you blow this team up from 2024? And like, I think that this team has done a great job in communications in a large extent. It has not done a great job in communicating to the general fan base, I think, why it is that, like, look, why didn't you sign Brandon Vasquez again? Or why would you not re-sign Alvaro Barreal?
Sure.
Lucho should know better on that regard. But
he should know better.
But this has revealed sort of to a degree I wasn't prepared for, that there is a disconnect in the fan base a little bit of, well, Lucho's got a point. They didn't even make an effort to keep Vasquez, Barreal, Moreno, and Arias. And it's like, it's a little more complex than that. And I understand the team doesn't like to have to say that, hey, we're not the best league in the world and players want to move on to further their career. But like, I was not prepared based on the reaction for the number of people that I saw online that also don't understand or think that Lucho has a point by saying that the team's roster, like they blew up a team that won Supporters Shield. And that was interesting to me because I thought that was more well known than apparently it was.
Well, but the converse to that is what I've also seen on the Bird app is people saying that they treated players like Vasquez and Barreal poorly because they didn't move them on sooner.
Right.
And like,
as if Lucho would have been happier that we didn't win the Supporters Shield last year.
That's the opposite of that complaint.
Right.
And like, that's also like, that's insane. Like,
or is Lucho mad that they didn't move earlier? Like Lucho's only looking out for the careers of all of his teammates.
I mean, look, ultimately you have to be a little bit of an adult and understand that different people have different interests. And by people, I also include corporations because they're people. Thank you, Mitt Romney.
Legally, yes.
Obviously.
And so like a team and a player sometimes have slightly divergent interests and they find a way to make them make sense through contracts.
Yep.
And so like Brandon Vasquez signs an extension,
Didn't have to. Could have become a free agent.
That gives him more money in the short term, a little less say so about where he goes in the short term.
Yep.
And maybe he doesn't move in the summer. He moves in the winter. He still gets a move in the winter. He still gets a 4X raise or whatever.
Yep.
To play the same sport, same position that he was playing at Cincinnati. Right. Like nobody should be upset about this.
A lot of people take that same deal in his position.
Yeah, it's like insane to be like to act like Brandon got screwed over by FC Cincinnati,
right?
In that exchange. So yeah. On the Lucho point, Lucho specific point. I think that we need to have like a little bit of perspective about Lucho Acosta as a player. When he played, he left Argentina to sign a contract for DC United. He was not a designated player at DC United. He was on a much, much, much lower salary as a younger player there. He had a really good season where he played second fiddle to Wayne Rooney.
Yep.
He had less good of a time after that season. Had a very complicated and disputed move that didn't happen to Paris Saint-Germain. there's from, again, like reputable sources,
Yes.
wildly different narratives about whether that was a real move or was ever going to happen or not.
Or
it didn't
who
happen.
was even aware of it and
Yep.
of the parties involved.
Yep. That didn't happen. And he kind of forced himself out of DC and moved on a free to Atlas. In a situation where DC, he wasn't an MLS free agent. DC, I think, still retained some of his rights or whatever.
Yeah,
and
they
he moved
did.
to Atlas in Mexico. It was, he played there during the pandemic. It was like a very unsettled time for like everybody.
Yeah.
But like he did not put up like all-star numbers in Atlas. He wasn't even like a full-time starter for them.
Right. And I want to say in one of those half seasons, they finished dead last in Mexico.
They might have. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
And then he gets brought back to FC Cincinnati. Gets brought back to MLS.
To MLS.
By
to
FC Cincinnati. DC, since they had their rights, were able to steal some GAM from FC Cincinnati to make the move happen. It was like a $4 million transfer fee, I think.
Somewhere in there.
And like mid-level DP salary.
Yeah.
His first year at FC Cincinnati was like, the team was terrible.
Yeah.
The team was poorly coached beyond that.
Yes.
About that transfer, I think it's worth pointing out Sam Stejskal, one of the preeminent MLS insiders, very publicly said did not believe Lucho Acosta was worth a DP spot.
A lot of MLS commenters didn't think he was worth a DP spot.
Thought it was a overpay, desperate FC Cincinnati getting taken for again. Yep.
And as I understand it, it was a, to give credit where credit's due, because it did prove to be a great move.
Yeah.
To give credit, I do believe this was a Hunter Freeman special. His 2021 was good. Like, he was good.
Yeah.
He was misused. He was used in a way where the team's only way of moving the ball from the last third to the front third was through Lucho.
Yeah.
So like when he lost the ball, it was in the last third. It was a terrible team. He put up pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
Like close to, at that point in time, his career best numbers.
Yeah.
And was from day one, to my eye, the best player FC Cincinnati ever had. And I was saying this to people in 21.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 22 that he was a top MLS player. And we were pushing him for MVP in 22.
Yeah.
And then 23, obviously he had the MVP season. 24, he had a great season, was on pace for a historically good season until he got hurt.
Yeah. Was outpacing his own MVP year.
He was on pace for the MLS assists record.
Yeah.
Potentially the MLS goal contributions record. Like he was going to put together a very special season until he got hurt, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And he still ended up with more goal contributions than his MVP season.
Which is wild.
But like he had a nice 21 on a terrible, terrible, terrible team.
Yeah.
But 22, 23, 24, those are the best. That's the best stretch of his entire career.
Yeah. And it's not close.
Like there's no argument that he was better at any point in time in his career.
He has the cool highlight with Rooney's, midfield crossfield assist And other than that, it's like the only real notable moment of his career before he's here.
So, like, we need him, sure. And I want him on the team.
Absolutely.
But he only reached the level he's at with FC Cincinnati. And I do think that
sure
part of it is not appreciated by a lot of people.
I guess it's not appreciated by a lot of people, but I think the problem is that I don't think, if the question is, okay, if you go back to the original Sam Stejskal, this was a waste of money, or he shouldn't be a DP, this was a bad use of a DP spot. I think that the take much more is that they're wrong about their evaluation of Lucho Acosta's talent.
Yeah.
Then that there was something special that this team did to unlock his potential. I don't think he would be on the radar, or would have been on the radar for, if this person gets his U.S. citizenship, this is someone that could give the U.S. men's national team a different look they don't have, if it wasn't for the talent level that he has. There aren't a lot of, like, he's an MVP. He won the MVP of MLS. Like, that alone puts him into a rarefied category of player that plays in this league. And you look at the comments that he makes to ESPN today.
ESPN FA Tres.
Sure, whatever.
I have
Sports Center.
I have a translation if you'd like me to read it.
Please do, so we can level set this conversation.
Yeah, so I will say this comes from Jose Roberto Nunez, who covers Philadelphia Union soccer. I know him to be a reputable source, so I am going to take his translation here at face value. I don't know how much was cut or any editorial he did, but he threw it in quotes, so I'm going to trust him. So I'm just going to read the whole quote here. Obviously, it has always been this is Lucho speaking, to be clear. So this is Lucho speaking to the interviewer. Obviously, it has always been a dream to play for Boca Juniors. I left at a young age. That is the club he came up with. And it's something I have always wanted to do and hope to do. And if not, I will continue to support Boca as a fan. The truth is, I haven't talked about it too much yet. This is where it gets interesting. This was a very recent decision I made to leave. I feel I've completed a cycle after 4 years of playing in Cincinnati. It's time to find a different scene and see how things can be resolved. I'm in no rush. Having just exited the playoffs, there are still several months to sort things out, but if the opportunity to return to Argentina arises, I'd love to take it. I'm a fan. My son is a fan. This return is sudden news, and my son is already telling me, let's go, let's go. Boca Juniors, if you're not familiar, is like the big club in Argentina. They've got a good rivalry with River Plate. There's like 5 or 6 big clubs in Argentina, to be clear, but like Boca is the one. They're the Yankees. They're the Cowboys. That's the big one. He came up in their academy. He's done very well for himself in MLS. He has mentioned wanting to go back to Boca in Argentina in the past. This is not the first time he's brought that up. However, it's the line, this was a very recent decision I made to leave. Whew.
I mean, if he is going to leave for sure, then trade him to San Jose for $3 million GAM.
No, absolutely not. False.
Like, trade him to the worst team in the league.
No.
For a league record GAM.
No. I don't want to play him ever. I don't want to play this guy ever.
I'll play him.
The weird thing is about all this is that I take this reporter at his word. There's nuance in language. I trust that, if he's providing a translation, he understands some of the nuance here and wouldn't otherwise be sensationalizing or editorializing. But like, I've made the decision to leave. That's a lot more final than the language was on Saturday.
Yep.
And it's very interesting. It's very odd to me. I didn't have a chance to listen back to what you guys talked about, but I'm sure you mentioned it. Very odd that he was pursuing U.S. citizenship, is in the process of pursuing U.S. citizenship, wanting to possibly make himself eligible for the U.S. men's national team, and would immediately look to be hopping out of the country and back to Argentina.
Well, maybe he got an update there and found out he wouldn't have citizenship until maybe a month or two before the 2026 World Cup, has a conversation with Pochettino and says, hey, I need 4 months runway with you in this team if you're going to have a chance to play in the World Cup. He realizes it's not there or something. I don't know.
I don't know either, but it's an interesting wrinkle to what looked to be, and that would be a possible explainer right here. That, like, if he found out that there's talk to Pochettino and Pochettino's like, yeah, not interested, not the direction that I want to be going here. I don't want to lead you on into thinking that there's a light at the end of the tunnel here. Maybe that's something that changes, how he views where he's spending his time. And that when Greg Berhalter was the manager, and if he'd had good conversations with him, maybe that's a reason to keep sticking things out in MLS, especially if the family situation isn't great here in the United States. But once he finds out that that's no longer a reality, that's something that, like, yeah, I could see that being the case. But it's until someone says that out loud,
right,
or says that, the behavior of wanting to leave is inconsistent with a lot of other behavior that Lucho Acosta has shown.
He signed a 3-year deal last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 years plus a team option.
Wanting to end his career here. This is my club that I want to play for the rest of time. It's very odd. Nature abhors a vacuum. So we're in the position right now where we're sitting here trying to speculate as to what the motives are. And people are using this, I think, as a Rorschach test for what their opinion of the FC Cincinnati front office is. And there's a robust opportunity out there for people to start drawing narratives where, by linking some dots up that may or may not have anything to do with one another. I don't know. What I do know is that Albright and FC Cincinnati ownership need to figure out a way to fix this. They need to figure out a way to fix this relationship with Lucho Acosta, because if he wants to go back to Argentina, they're not going to get big value for his contract in Argentina. Like, it would not surprise me if this ends up being something where it's a mutual contract termination with him going on a free somewhere.
I wouldn't do that. They left a DP spot unused this year. If they do bring Kevin Denke in, somebody who has done something in Europe, who's much younger than Lucho, I would play chicken.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can. I don't think you can, because you have absolutely no one on the roster that replicates his skill set. You just don't. You can.
That's all right.
We've seen what it looks like when he's not on the field, and it looks fucking hideous.
Yeah, without a good attacker on the team.
Yeah.
We've seen except the team has looked good without Lucho and with Bupenza.
That is true, actually.
Yeah, just
and we're bringing a guy in who is,
sure, but
better than Bupenza.
If you're spending $15 million on an attacker, then you're going to miss me all day with Dado Valenzuela being the trigger man in the middle to set him up.
What if Luca Orishano is the trigger man?
I don't mind Luca as the 10.
He doesn't do that. It's not his thing. Luca's a terrible passer. He is a terrible passer.
You could play a different formation.
Noonan doesn't play different formations, man. Like, this is it.
Unless he plays this formation because of Lucho.
Yeah, or you play a 4-3-3 and
like
you've
Noonan
got
Noonan has talked about
Kubo up top,
which I never got a chance to say, but like Noonan has talked about the fact that like the formation and the way that he like picks the team has been all around maximizing Lucho.
But when Lucho hasn't been on the field, they haven't done anything differently. They've attempted
because so players are all used to playing the same thing. Except, again, the team did look dangerous last year with Bupenza and without Lucho.
I don't want to watch it. I don't want to embrace a future without Lucho either. But no.
If it comes down to
hold on. To be very clear, I don't want to embrace a future without Lucho. That's number one. But if I'm going to be asked to embrace a future without Lucho, I damn sure want another designated player on the team. I don't want to play this stupid game all year that we played this year, where, especially if we're going with the 2 designated player setup, where we're only playing 1 designated player out of a possible 3 you could use on your roster. And we know they're not going to use all their U22s. So
Yeah. Well, Lucho, one, we're probably going to have another designated player slot available next year. If we go the 3 DP route versus the 2 DP route.
Yeah.
Because OB's not going to take up a DP spot.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, I'm not like we've gone through periods of time where like Lucho was like doing whatever he's doing. Like I would do a staring contest with Lucho, and then he'll fold. Like unless like unless like Heung-min Son or James Madison is available, then I'm like, yeah, let's mutual term.
Now, it's just I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do this whole thing again where you've got this malcontent player who doesn't want to be here taking a designated player's spot up. It's one thing, like we did this with Brenner, and it's one thing if you've got a league MVP carrying the other designated player spot. This new guy, Denki, could be great. But his history tells you that if he's a striker alone isn't going to carry a team. A striker makes a good team great. A striker does not make a average team good. It rarely works out that way. Luca Orishano can't play this position. Flat out say it. Like if you are telling yourself that you think Luca can play Lucho Acosta's attacking midfield position, I'm sorry, you're wrong. He doesn't pass well enough to do that. He is a ball possessor. He is a chance creator for himself. When he has been asked to pass, it looks awful.
I think they could play a different way without Lucho. Like, so.
Okay, so
hold on. Okay, if you were going to make and I don't really buy this. Like, I like the team with Lucho. I think they can sign a striker. They can play with Lucho. I assume Lucho is able to play with like a really good player. But if you were to make an argument for the team being potentially better without Lucho or moving on from Lucho, it would be something along the lines of like, he's a very high usage player. He requires other players to defer to him. He needs the ball at like every phase of the game, and he needs players to like read him. He's not going to adapt to other players. That would be an argument that like they could sign another guy who's like more receptive to playing off of other people and not necessarily having all of the ball and not necessarily having the entire formation designed around him and having a higher ceiling. Because like, but I don't buy that, because Lucho played well with Brenner, played well with Vasquez, played well with Barreal. But
and the other problem too is that all the players that you've signed, most of this team is under contract for next year. And like, you brought all these players in specifically because you want to run this formation and run this format, this style of play that features Lucho Acosta playing in the middle and being the trigger man in the middle.
A lot of these guys are playing out of position.
Just
Yedlin can play right back.
The
Like
bottom
Orshana is playing out of position. Kubo is like mostly playing out of position. Like you could do like a 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Without Lucho.
You can also decline the options on Assad and Obi.
Or you could do a 4-3-3, without Lucho.
You got some options.
You do, but like I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him. And like this team wasn't good enough this year with Lucho. And you're talking about now potentially going into next year without him. To me, I just they made a positive move getting the designated player striker signed right now. And he'll be back after African Cup of Nations. He'll be here in time ahead of the preseason. They'll have his visa situation hopefully sorted out, and they can have a full off season to integrate this player into the lineup. If you are going, and this is to the point, Grayson, you're saying playing chicken with Lucho. If you're going to play chicken with Lucho, you are basically saying that you are okay punting the 2025 season. Because if they because if they play chicken with Lucho and Lucho doesn't blink, then you have built a team that is dependent on that number 10, and you're potentially not going to have him for that year. And by the time you decide that, okay, one side or the other wins, by the time you're like, okay, fine, we blink, we're getting rid of Lucho, you either have to make that decision before the end of the primary transfer window to bring in a replacement, or you're waiting till the summer to bring in a replacement, and you're stuck watching Dado Valenzuela trip and fall and fumble his way through playing the 10.
I am not stuck.
So there are teams like alive in the playoffs who were like built around the 10 and signed strikers mid-year and are still alive. Like Minnesota was built around Reynoso, let him go, signed, a DP striker, and they're still in the playoffs. Like Atlanta dropped Almada and dropped their star striker, and they're alive in the playoffs. Like maybe, and look, this is devil's advocate. I don't want someone throwing this in my face, but like we've had 2 years in a row where we've had top teams in the league, and Lucho was the star player, and the team, and the attack was built around Lucho, and it wasn't enough to get it done.
Like it was specifically the offense could not score is what undid.
Sure, this year, 100%.
Sure, but
last year the defense fell apart because of the stuff that happened.
Right, but like if you're going to move on from, I don't have a problem moving on from him. That's fine. I don't want to, but I don't have a problem. But like this, it's a shit or get off the pot situation. You can't have him taking up a DP spot, especially if you're going to do the 2 DP U22 route. Like if you're only using one of your 3 designated player spots because Lucho is a holdout and you're playing chicken with Lucho, you can't do that. Like you can do that.
What if you sign 2?
Well, then you
and stare him down
because then he's still under contract.
Yeah.
So you're doing the 3DP model, and they've already said they're not going to do the 3DP model.
They've said they're likely not to.
Okay.
But they also said that they were blindsided by the Lucho thing.
So if like their plan
which is funny to be like blindsided by like your star player deciding he's done.
Right.
Which also tells you that like he's a very fragile butterfly, and maybe you just gotta like put him in the net and pit him against the wall and be fine.
I'm gonna give you a controversial take. You gotta let him go now. And I don't even think you need a very big return. Mutual terminate this contract
I think ownership group is going to have limited appetite after setting the MLS transfer record potentially with Dinky.
Sure.
I don't think our ownership group is going to be excited to take a small incoming transfer fee for Lucho out and then sign another attacker coming in.
Well,
I just don't think it's going to happen.
Fair enough.
They seem like they want to do one splash. Like Atlanta spent like $60 million in transfer fees. I think our ownership group likes to do one splash and then likes to kind of, nickel and dime a bit.
Think about this. Luca Orishano is suddenly one of the best players in the league.
Chief doesn't like him.
Well, that's fair.
I don't like him playing the Lucho Acosta spot. I don't think he can do it.
He's a very good player. He's going to cost us about $3 million. That's about what you would get by letting Lucho walk. You're getting $4 million in salary back. If you're looking at like how ownership is viewing this, if you can go get a guy to make $1 million a year on a $3 or $4 million transfer fee, that's about how much Lucho was going to cost you next year anyway.
But that's not what it costs you on the salary budget.
No, but you're going to be a DP anyway, so who cares?
All right.
So, if you've got $4 million to spend next year and you're going to say Lucho Acosta or a 25-year-old currently tearing up the Peruvian league and he turns out to be the next Rui Diaz, I don't know. Sounds fine to me.
I just don't have any faith in ownership to find that guy because they haven't found the backup to Lucho Acosta despite looking for it for multiple.
Well, they haven't had his salary. They haven't had his roster spot open.
Right. And they haven't needed his position open. And by the way, sounds like they had Weston McKennie in a position to agree. So, not saying we need to go sign Weston McKennie, but they're clearly capable of doing that.
If they sign Weston McKennie to replace Lucho,
I'm still
back in.
No, I'm still.
I'm in.
I'm Chief was always out.
Yeah, I think Lucho Acosta should be on the national team instead of Weston McKennie. I think he's a better player.
I think
Weston's a better player, to be honest.
Sure,
honestly,
does Weston care? Because if Weston cares, he's a better player. There's ample evidence to suggest Weston doesn't care.
He's hurt right now, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, there's a real good question of if Weston would care in MLS. Yeah. I agree that would be an issue.
I just want to point out that, at this point, Lucho has said multiple times he wants to leave. He asked Albright, according to reporting by Laurel Thaler, or at least was involved in conversations with Albright and his agent, to find opportunities outside of FC Cincinnati this summer. I think you have to pull the cord now. Get the most money you can from him. I'm not saying let him go for free unless you have to, but you try to find somebody willing to pay you money for him and you take it and we move on. Because even if you somehow beg and plead and convince and give him a pay raise, you're not guaranteed to have Lucho bought in come summer.
Can we do a player swap for Kevin Kelsey?
Yeah, send him to Ukraine. He'll love that.
To Ukraine.
I'm sorry, I think you mean the protectorate of Russia.
Right.
And bring Kelsey in on no transfer fee.
I think Shakhtar would take it.
I don't think Lucho would take it as the problem.
Well, if he doesn't like it here, he can go to Europe and play Champions League.
Yeah, come on, Champions League
football.
Play
home games in Slovakia.
Because, something's going on.
Does Lucho speak Russian is the real question here.
Yeah, he speaks English, but doesn't want to.
Most of the Shakhtar Donetsk team speaks Spanish or Portuguese. Yeah. I feel pretty confident in that.
I do agree with you, Kevin. I think, number one, they need to, whatever the situation is, I think that they need to make a serious effort to try and make the relationship work, because I don't think that you are going to find a better player than Lucho Acosta. We'll put it this way. I don't believe that on an MLS budget, specifically a budget that I would give that FC Cincinnati would have after putting this $15 million or $18 million cash outlay for Denke, I have a tough time believing they will find a better player than Lucho Acosta with what they have left in terms of discretionary spend from ownership. Having said that, if they can't get this figured out by, I would say, this time a month from now, I think you got to move on, because I think the risk of going into the season without that second designated player spot filled, you are just asking it's too big of an ask in this league to play games with one of your three DP spots performing.
I think I'll say this. If they let Lucho go, they have to do the 3DP model next year. They have to.
And like a real DP, not a Joe Aquini DP.
Yes. They have to have 3 real DPs next year.
It could be an DP. Yeah.
One can come in the summer
But you have to commit before the season, right? So
Yeah, but they have to have 3 real DPs next year.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't see them winning MLS Cup by signing whatever they sign as the Lucho replacement. I just don't see it.
we're already out on Lucho's replacement.
Well,
it's a hard position to fill. There's a reason why Lucho is Lucho.
I think they need to maximize. I think they need to maximize the veteran talent positions. I don't think that the GAM bonus and the 4 U22s are going to do it. And like, you know, there's an excuse for not winning MLS Cup last year. There's an excuse for not winning MLS Cup this year. There's not an excuse for not winning Leagues Cup either year. And there's not an excuse for, you know, really not winning Open Cup last year. But there's an excuse for not winning MLS Cup the last 2 years. There's going to be an excuse if they don't win MLS Cup next year. I don't think any of the excuses are... I'm not moved, I guess, by any of the excuses for the last 2 years. And I don't think that like winning MLS Cup next year excuses not winning it this year, but I'm certainly not, you know, I'm not crediting any excuse that happens next year that prevents them from winning MLS Cup. Cause so the way I look at the team is the defense and midfield is as good or better than anybody in the league.
With Lucho.
No, because I put Lucho in the attack.
Okay.
So I'm saying like the three center backs and the 2 midfielders are as good or better than anybody in MLS right now. So fix the attack. Like you're going to be in every game. Like they were in the last game that they just lost. Like they had 2 shutouts in round 1 of MLS Cup playoffs and didn't advance.
Cool format.
Yeah. Neat.
I don't think you need a 10 as good as Lucho if Denki is what he looks to be.
But you need players.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm not saying
there's no. I disagree entirely. There is no striker in MLS that carries a team. Just isn't. Like it is
Christian Benteke, DC United this year.
How was DC United this year? Where they finished?
No, that's not a good argument.
No. I'm just saying you can't tell
Minnesota
me that
doesn't have a 10.
A striker can't perform without a 10. That's nonsense. We
already
know.
I didn't say a striker can't perform. I said they can't carry a team.
I think our defense will carry this team. Awaziem, Robinson, Miazga, Teenage Adabi, Roman Celentano, DeAndre Yedlin.
Minnesota
That's a pretty
is worse.
damn good defense.
Minnesota is categorically worse than us. And they're still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. The West sucks. Look, that's no news.
Sure. But
apparently the East sucks too.
Yeah. Like it turns out.
Who is Seattle's 10?
Well, they don't like you're talking now in hypotheticals that like, will this team switch to a formation that is less dependent on having that 10 and having that 10 be the chance creator?
Well, by all accounts, they wanted to. By all accounts, they wanted to not have a formation that was so dependent on a 10.
They wanted to so badly that they haven't shown it at all this entire time.
Because personnel have dictated that. This is potentially an opportunity to sign other personnel.
Sure. And now, but you do that now. And now I ask the question is how does Pavel Buka fit into this new reality where, you know, the midfield is completely different? How does Obi fit into the midfield with this new reality?
They both played in formations different from what we play now.
Yeah. Obi played as a wide midfielder.
Sure, but they were all.
Obi also played as a winger.
Yeah, right.
Everybody on this team was selected for the specific purpose of building this team around Lucho Acosta. And now you remove Lucho Acosta from the equation, and now I've got lots of questions. And the goal for next year would be to go into the next year with as few questions as possible. If the goal is to win hardware.
So that is the argument that Lucho has been carrying Noonan and Albright, and that in reality they'll be exposed as frauds if Lucho's not on this team.
I think that what the argument is that Noonan and Albright have built a team around this singular talent, MVP level talent, and you remove the MVP level talent, and then all of a sudden, all these players that you have curated and selected specifically because of their ability to play with this one player, all of a sudden you're left with a collection of parts that don't build a car any longer.
Sure. But maybe you find a really good player who can also play with other really good players.
I trust them to go out and find another designated player.
Like Cucho was really good, and then they signed Rossi, and then Rossi was also really good. And they were both really good together and separately.
Yeah.
And we have not seen that.
No.
Except for Rupenza, who was like really good without Lucho.
Yeah. No, it's possible. But what I'm saying, though, is that like now you've gone from, for the 2025 FC Cincinnati season, if they have to move on from Lucho, you've gone from needing to hit on Denke, the striker. Now you're going to need to have to hit on two players. You're going to have to hit on this next replacement for Lucho.
Agree.
You're just increasing. And like, look, Albright has a track record of bringing in some really good players. He's also brought in some awful players. Corey Baird was awful this year. Kevin Kelsey, I don't want to say he's awful, but Kevin Kelsey, mixed results from Kevin Kelsey. I don't think he's going to be here next year. There have been Joe Aquini was terrible. Like, so yeah, like I think Albright's hit rate is way higher than his miss rate, but now you've gone from needing to make one home run signing to two home run signings in an off season. And now you are really and truly upending everything about this team going into next year. And like you're talking about formation switches, you're talking about tactical switches, you're talking about different deployments of talent, and like what you thought you could project from FC Cincinnati, you got to rip that up now. And it's just, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but you have no way of knowing going into next year.
I think that's all. I think it's all reasonable. I think everything you said is reasonable. I do, but what I do think though is that we should expect people to be able to deal with that. And I think it will be fair after the end of next year to be asking questions about, people's performance. If the team doesn't win trophies.
Yeah.
And I
guess we wait.
Yep. I mean, I don't think that Lucho, like if Lucho does move, I don't think Lucho moving will be an excuse for why the team doesn't perform next year.
Agreed.
Like I would still expect appropriate moves to be made.
Yeah.
For the team to be at least contending, if not winning.
Oh yeah.
Trophies.
And I agree completely.
Like you look at the rest of the personnel that are expected to be on the team. This is a top tier MLS team.
Yes.
This is a top level MLS team. If like Matt Miazga is healthy, regardless of what happens with Miles Robinson in the offseason, you go into next year with a back three of Hadebe, Miazga, and Awaziem. You have a midfield of Wobodo and maybe Wobodo and Buka. And you got other personnel around them. That's a team that is a extremely solid. It's a better foundation than basically any other MLS team has.
Yeah.
So you put like any attacking talent around it, you should be in a good position.
Denki, Kubo, or Ishano.
Yeah,
You'd have around it. Yedlin's under contract. Get yourself a left back. Dare I say Kai Wagner, and we're cooking, baby.
Yep. I'm like, I hear everything Chief is saying, and I don't like necessarily disagree with it, but I do think that like my bottom line is, whatever happens with all of this, the expectation should be the team has not lost any momentum when it comes to being on a trophy winning trajectory.
Yes. And for that to be the case, this Denki signing needs to be a home run. And whoever they sign to replace Lucho, if they can't get this worked out, needs to be a home run. And
well, the Denki signing, by all accounts, is going to be a near or MLS record. So yes, it needs to be a home run.
Yeah,
like it has to be the best signing in MLS.
I say this because the last two designated player signings Albright has signed have been terrible. Bupenza was egg on the face, and the team took a bath on the transfer. And Joe Aquini was comically awful.
I will always disagree about Bupenza. I think he 100% had the talent.
Doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. Like, we don't. The
game
didn't do it on the field. He
won as a supporter shield in Toronto,
and also cost this team this year. Quite frankly,
that's fine. I mean, Miazga cost us the shield or the cup last year. If we want to do that,
sure. Like, but I'm saying specifically to the designated player signings, Albright has whiffed on his last two that he's brought in, and the pressure's on now, I think, to do that. So I guess maybe the best way to wrap this is let's put the date on it. January 31st, 2025. Is Lucho Acosta a member of FC Cincinnati? Kevin?
No.
Grayson?
Yes. Chief?
I'm going to say no.
I will say either way, it would behoove everybody to resolve it sooner.
Boca is not putting $4 million in Lucho Acosta.
What's the minimum they would have to bid for us to get a GAM conversion?
I'm not talking about. So first of all, if it happens this year, zero. We're not having it because we're selling Barreal.
We'll max out the
amount. We're max out the game conversion from the Barreal sale.
So if you wanted to play that game, you'd send Lucho on loan with a guaranteed buy option
for the following year.
Yeah.
Which actually would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, maybe. But like Lucho makes like $4 million a year here.
That's a lot.
It's multiples of what it's. First of all, he's only made that recently. And second of all,
1 year.
It's multiples of what he's made at any other point in his career. I don't think Boca is going to give that to him.
Boca's a big club. They pay a lot of money. I will say in general, the Argentinian league still has issues paying salaries. Guys have to go a couple of extra weeks without getting those checks in their account. Again, Boca is on a slightly different level here. I don't know if they got $4 million for Lucho. They'll have more than other teams in Argentina, but probably not on top of a transfer fee. Yeah.
Let's see. Salary Sport has Boca's wages. They have their highest paid player as Edinson Cavani at $3 million.
Yeah, he's not going to make more than Cavani.
Probably not. The next highest player is Marcos Rojo at 2.6. The next highest player is Sergio Romero at 1.5. Lucho is not making, and the fourth is Dario Benedetto at 1.4. Lucho's not making more than any of those guys.
No. Lucho'd have to go there making.
You want to make more money than you've ever made in your life for 1 year, and then go make 25% of that.
Yeah,
I just don't. Oof. It just doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway,
it feels like we're done with this conversation. It feels like Lucho's like panicking. Like it feels like something's like very unsettling to him right now.
Just tell him to go buy a Lamborghini. Like that's like go do some like midlife
buy a
crisis
Lamborghini
shit.
and a Ferrari.
Yeah,
both.
Buy both of them. And then, like, race them. I don't know. Do some midlife crisis stuff. Like, come on. We need to
race them with Yamil Assad. That'll be fun. Okay, let's wrap up this conversation. Let's head on over to part 2 where, hey, this was not necessarily a negative conversation, but it wasn't the most positive conversation. In part 2, I want positive vibes only. It's our Gold Star shining moment of the season. We've got some nominations to run through. Let's do that in part 2. And before we get to the next part of the episode, I gotta tell you about our friends over at Cincy Shirts. Look, it is the holiday season, and I can't think of anything better than to get your friends, family, loved ones, absolute strangers off the street something from Cincy Shirts. They've got all of your favorite sports teams covered. They've got local universities covered. They've got neighborhoods, old defunct businesses. Some of my favorite gifts I've ever given my dad have been old Cincinnati hockey franchises that were around back in his day. Okay, there's some really, really good stuff over at Cincy Shirts. Hey, I'll also mention you can pick up Postcast merch there. That's right. You want an Opie shirt? You want a one of the 12 shirt? Or just a big old boring logo on the front of the shirt? They've got you covered. They have 3 locations you can go to in person in Loveland, Oakley Hyde Park, in Northern Kentucky, and they'll work with you a little bit. If you want to print something on the back instead of the front, hey, you didn't hear it from me, but they'll work with you a little bit there. They're good people. They can print anything on demand in size that you want, even if it's not out there on the shelves. It is an awesome, awesome setup. And hey, while you are there or online, use the promo code ThePostCincy. All one word, all caps. It knocks 10% off your entire order, and that works on Postcast merch as well. So don't buy our own merch at full price. What are you doing? So huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this episode and for being our home for merch. Thank you for decking out your friends, family, loved ones, and strangers in Postcast apparel. All right, back to the episode. All right, and we are back. And gentlemen, let's put on some old nostalgia glasses here and look back at the season that was with our Gold Star shining moment of the season. I mean, why not? This wasn't the opportunity to do more postseason stuff. So, hey, why not take the opportunity to look back on the season? We posted this all over on social media, or at least the handful of social media handles we're using, and we got some nominations. It was fun. It was fun just reading back on the comments, thinking about these great moments. Kyle Butler on Instagram saying Luka's record-breaking 79.81 yard Hail Mary of a goal against Montreal. He added, "Let's hope the Bengals don't find out and need a place kicker anytime soon." I think it's a good call. Not for nothing, Brandon Aubrey, who is tearing up the NFL for the Cowboys, was a Philadelphia 2 player. Played for the Bethlehem Steel. He might have played against FC Cincinnati. I think
he did.
Yeah. Just really fun to think about. Paul Miller on Instagram also adding, whipping Inter Miami 6-1.
That was fun.
It feels like a lifetime ago. Redbeard throwing out Big Kev scoring against Cebus and Atlanta in his debut games with Who Needs Vasquez positioning and size. He adds, I wonder what happened to that guy after that. It does make you wonder. Kevin Kelsey is an interesting one. He looked like the man. He looked like the second coming of Brandon Vasquez, and then slowly but surely disappeared. I don't know if he wasn't doing the defensive work or pressing when he was supposed to, or was just more of a wild card than we thought. I don't know. Lack of Zach again on Instagram saying Lucho's game winner against Philly, an actual buzzer beater that had the building erupt. I don't think I'll be the first one to point this out. In fact, I think the first person I saw point this out was Joseph Mamey, who said it was just finding out that Lucho had been looking for a transfer sometime in the summer around Leagues Cup. And just a few weeks after screaming, "This is my city," pointing to the ground after that winner, he was already trying to see what else was out there.
Maybe he this is my city. I already own this. I need to go find some other city that I can. Like, and Alexander wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer.
If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not first, you're last.
Right. This is my city. This was my city. Maybe we should go back and look. Was he saying this was my city?
This was my city.
Who is this one? John Conklin saying painting Ohio orange and blue, starting in Columbus for the first time ever. Breathing out the nostril face. So good. That was a fun moment, underrated moment. That was pretty awesome. Really appreciated that one. Over on Twitter, Opie Dope, who tweets out, which by the way, the handle there is at ChopCheese93. Loving this account. Okay, well done. Said, this transcends all shining moments. And I think I can send this to you guys in the chat so you can see this. This was his shining moment. I have to say, it is a pretty shining moment in this one. This is a scene in TQL Stadium. Somebody is wearing the dynamic kit. They have their finger out, and a pigeon has landed on their finger in the middle of the stadium.
It's pretty good.
It's a great photo.
That's a good shining moment of the season. A lot of people mention this one, so I'll mention two of them here. Ginger Riley saying Kubo's subbing in and scoring a hat trick in less than 10 minutes against San Jose, adding a gif of a minion dropping the mic. Yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. On Blue Sky, which Chief would love to get your thoughts on this. The Sam Antic saying Kubo on the postcast is the only right answer. And Sam, I gotta agree. That might be my shining
that seems
moment.
like the right answer. Yeah.
And see, you didn't even want to listen to this answer, Grayson.
I know.
Hand up.
The Gold Star season moment of this Gold Star shining moment of the season for me has to be the comeback against NYCFC in Leagues Cup. People around us had already left when the sudden swing from 0-2 to 4-2 in just 10 minutes happened. Got to watch goals from 4 different contributors a couple times before the celebrations had even stopped from the previous goal. Yeah, unfortunate that you needed the comeback. But that was pretty exciting. That was a good time.
Yep.
I'll wrap it up with this one. Patrick Lonnie saying Noonan and company duct taping this season together to keep us near the top of the table all year. Was it pretty? No, but it kept us in the conversation all year at least. I think that might end up being the narrative on the season, is that almost anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. So you run through the list of Bupenza blowing up spectacularly, multiple injuries on the back line, Obi takes a step back, Orishano doesn't work out as a left wing back. And this team was third in the East and had a clear shot to MLS Cup final if they could just score one goal. That's a pretty good coaching job, all things being equal.
Except like most of what went wrong was after what got them into third.
Yeah, the wheels fell off.
They got it. No, they didn't maintain shit.
Yeah, they fell off hard.
They maintained the league position, the league table.
They were in first.
Well,
They were in first by a lot and then nearly got knocked out of Champions League by the end of the season.
We were having to consult the rule book a couple of times to see if we were.
It was a little touch and go there for a second.
So anyway,
I'm choosing to remember that we maintained.
Yeah, I think my vote for this is, did somebody say Kubo coming off the bench to score 3 goals?
No, Kubo coming on the postcast.
That's self-indulgent, and I refuse to acknowledge it. I'm going to say the 3 goals because
this entire exercise is
that was the postcast bump. So I want to.
That's true. That's true.
I give it to the postcast bump. That's my shining moment of the season.
Postcast bump, shining moment of the season.
So Ginger Riley, I'm giving you whose name is added there, the Eternal Optimist. So would love to get Ginger's thoughts on the Lucho situation.
Right.
But Ginger, you are going to win a $50 gift card. Just to the other winners, they are coming. I need to actually go physically pick them up, and then I will be sending them to you. So just know I don't have them in hand, and that's why you don't have them in hand. This is not the fault of Gold Star. It is the fault of me. Chief, what was when you think back on this season, is there going to be a moment from this season that will stand out to you, positive or negative, that just sort of define this season?
I think the moment that defined this season for me was the striking out of the transfer window. And that was sort of the season in the balance, because like everything else sort of builds to that. Like you could say Aaron Bupenza picking the worst possible fight in bar fight history on a night out changes the trajectory of the season.
Yeah.
But like to me, the drone of who they had, like, it's Weston McKennie. Oh, now they're after Josh Sargent. Oh, now they're big game hunting out there.
Yeah.
And that thought that existed that we all had of this team needs one more player to put it over the top. And then when they didn't get that, it just felt incredibly deflating. And I know that you were trying to keep a positive face on it, but like, to me, it's weird how, that was the moment of the season that like they needed that one more player to push them over the top. And instead they got a option Z who came in and didn't score a single goal. And when I think back on this season, that's sort of the moment I'm going to remember of that. This was a team in a season sort of where there were 2 paths this team could have taken. And because they weren't able to secure that big signing that they needed, that, the things sputtered and ultimately just fizzled at the end of the year. So it was a fun season. There were multiple times along the way where the team was fun. It was frustrating in equal parts. But I think that summer transfer saga sort of perfectly encapsulates where this season was and why this season sort of feels like it was a missed opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I think.
But those 3 goals from Kubo were sick, though. So
they were. I don't know, Grayson. Same question to you. Is there a moment that'll stick out? Hearing back, oh yeah, that was the 2024 season.
It's very close to Chiefs. It's the time when the Tom Bogert article about the about FC Cincinnati's attempts at signing players in the summer transfer window came out.
Yeah.
And I realized that there were a lot of people who would rather dunk on people who wanted the team to sign good players than would want the team to sign good players. Like, because like there was after the end of the transfer window, there were a lot of people, us included, who were not happy with what was done. And then I feel like the prevailing tweet after the Tom Bogert article came out was like, well, don't a lot of people feel stupid right now? And my answer is no. Like,
Yeah.
I would rather my team sign players than like wish they'd sign players. And it does feel like the story of the season is we would have been better with the players we wished we'd had than the players we had.
Man, it's funny to think that if Weston McKennie's on this team and good, let's put aside the fears that he would not try as hard, this Lucho conversation's a lot easier.
I mean, I honestly like if Lucho, if Weston McKennie's on the team,
I don't think it makes a difference.
No, the team wins MLS Cup.
I don't think there's a chance in hell Weston stays motivated on an MLS team based on his history.
I don't think I'm not saying Weston would be as good as he is on Juve. I do think that Weston would be enough of a difference maker on this team that it would not have gone out against NYCFC. And then looking at what's left.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Like the motivation issue would have probably, or the I'm going to go into full coast mode probably wouldn't have started until 2025.
Yeah, I think so.
In 2024, there would still be that pressure to justify the transfer fee, I think.
And then in the playoffs, you go.
Yeah, or
like,
you coast until
everybody
the playoffs.
Goes in the playoffs.
Yeah, that would have been fun. Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be Luca Orishano scoring bangers. It's not any one moment, but just like every goal he scored was an incredible moment. He came out of nowhere. It was amazing that we found a Barreal clone, a player that I think a lot of people now would even agree is probably a better player than Barreal.
I don't like that. He's not a Barreal clone. He's his own dude. And like he doesn't play like Barreal does. He's nowhere. Yes. He's a way better creator off the dribble than Barreal ever was on his best day. He's a better shooter than Barreal, but he's like an exponentially inferior passer in terms of like passing vision than Barreal was. Like,
sorry,
part of the deal with this year is that they had to get used and they had to figure out how the hell to use Luca Orishano in the first part of the year.
We figured it out, though.
We did figure it out a little bit.
No, I just meant in terms of we found a winger from Velez to come in and play wing back. That like they found a guy at the same academy.
Also, Barreal played winger a good amount at FC Cincinnati and never did
correct
what Orishano did at winger.
And at right winger as well. It's not like they even played him inverted. So, yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I think Orishano breaking out is going to be the what I'll remember. So there you go. I've got a couple of little FC Cincinnati news things, and I have some Patreon questions. Do we want to just wrap up with a couple of FC Cincinnati news?
Let's roll into it.
Let's roll into it. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do the FC Cincinnati news and then we'll call it a day. Got to shout this one out. Luke Spencer. It's a name that if you were not around in 2016 is a name that you are not going to be familiar with. Cincinnati native. Luke Spencer has been promoted to the head coach of FC Tulsa in USL Championship. Luke Spencer played for FC Cincinnati in 2016. He was not picked up. There was some contract dispute going into 2017 where he left to join Louisville City and became really fucking good. He won MLS or USL Cup MVP in 2018, where he was also a part of a 3-man co-head coach of Louisville when James O'Connor left. It was a very weird situation. He is 33 years old and will be taking over FC Tulsa. Kind of fun to have been following a team long enough that former players are getting head coaching jobs. He is not, however, the first former FC Cincinnati player to take a head coaching job of a professional team. I'll throw it to you guys. Can you tell me who played for FC Cincinnati and coached a professional team. I'll give you a hint. They won a title.
Played for FC Cincinnati and coached a professional team.
You're never going to get it, just to be clear.
Tyler Pollock?
That's a good guess, but no. If you could tell me the league, I'd give you a win.
Sem DeWitt?
Oh, that's another good guess.
In the Faroe Islands?
I think that's where he was playing last.
Oh, was it
oh?
Not Deco Kanan, the other guy. Fuck, I can't remember his name.
Go back the other way. Deco Kanan.
Deco Kanan was? Okay.
It's Deco Kanan?
Deco Kanan was the head coach of the LA Force in Nisa, baby, where they won the title.
Is that professional?
Ish. Professional.
So long as the checks clear, yes, they are supposed to receive checks. They don't always receive checks is kind of the problem in Nisa. So there you go. 2024 Nisa champions, Deco Kanan. Does it count? Barely. But yeah, congrats to Luke Spencer for joining number 2. I have one more news story. It is sad. I don't know if there's any other FC Cincinnati news that I have missed before we get to this final update.
No, I think we have to go.
I think this is it. So if you've probably seen it already online if you're listening to our podcast, but kind of hard not to miss. Actually, the entire footballing world came together to mourn his passing. Marco Angulo passed away this week. It's a result of the injuries he sustained in a automobile collision a couple of weeks ago. That collision had already claimed the life of one LDU Quito player. I believe it was LDU Quito.
I think it was 2 other individuals. I think at least one of them was a youth player with another team.
That's what it was. Okay. Yeah. Brutal, devastating for his family. He was an FC Cincinnati player. He was on loan at Quito. It's tough. He was 22 years old. His family, I'm sure, this is awful.
Married with a kid, which I didn't know at all, which is just horrendous.
Did not know that either. The memorial or the remembrance posts that have gone out from FC Cincinnati and so many of his former teammates have been nice to see. But yeah, it's tough. You don't expect this when following a team of, again, mostly incredibly healthy, young professional athletes. You don't expect for this to be the case. So
yeah. It was interesting, like ESPN FC had a post about like what happens to him on rosters, ultimate team, and it's all very trivial. But also, I can't ever recall ever seeing something like that where they had to figure out like what do we do, like what happens to his digital version of him now that this has happened to the real life human being. And it's horrendous. 22 years old is way too young for something like this to happen. By all accounts, he seemed like he was a really, really good kid, had a bright future ahead of him. And this sucks. And it sucks. It would suck independent of the FC Cincinnati connection.
Yep.
Yeah.
By any like internet trace of him, he seemed like a very upbeat, like infectious, charismatic young guy. And it's like a lot of people have seen the posts from his teammates of their pictures with him and whatever. And it's just terrible. That it ended this way. And you know, I just hope that his family has some, you know, can move on in a positive way at all. I have no idea.
Yeah, man. And so wish the best to his family and
friends, teammates, everybody. Just, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I wouldn't wish this on the worst of my worst enemies. Just incredibly sad. So prayers, thoughts, whatever it is that you believe in, or whatever it is that you offer up to people in this situation, we're offering them up to everyone involved in this. So there you have it.
So there's not a good way to transition out of this. So let's head on over to part 3. Let's answer some Patreon questions and let's get out of here. So let's put a little music between us and that news, huh? All right, we are back, and let's wrap this thing up with a couple of Patreon questions. Again, you too can financially support us for just a couple of bucks a month. And I do mean a couple, is literally 2 is the only amount of money we ask for. You can't give us more. If you want to give us less, I guess you could reach out. If you really just want to give $1, 2 is too much. But if you do that, you can ask a question a month. You also get your name in highlighter pink on the Discord, which we have a Discord, by the way. So feel free to join that. But yeah, the questions that we have asked this month come to us from our patrons here. So let's start with Ty. Ty asks a question that I don't think I'm allowed to answer. So I will pose it to you, Grayson, and then to you, Chief. So think about your answer. But Grayson, the question to you is, Kevin, yes or no?
No.
Okay. I think I would have gone with yes, but I'll agree to disagree. That was the entire question. Kate Durso asks, this one's for Chief specifically. Chief, how do we join the subway organizing effort? Chop, chop, buddy.
That sounds like a stay tuned.
Stay tuned. After last week's results, Chief going to have a lot of free time on his hands in the upcoming weeks. So
grab a shovel.
Yeah, start digging. No, legit, stay tuned. I hope that there's some interesting news coming on this front. I would like there to be news coming on this front.
Me too. Consider this platform, Chief, at your disposal when it comes to subway lobbying.
Right.
We don't take a lot
of. I'm allowed to use this platform to help myself.
Look, we take 2 positions, MAGA, and we'll build a subway. Those are the only 2 positions.
My only goal in life now is to ride the subway to the Sundance Film Festival. That's what I need to happen.
Before or after an NWSL
game.
Sundance
Film Festival.
My God! Yes,
I do have one.
Please.
I have a request that I do want to read.
I am aware of this request, and
from
I am shocked we did not read this before.
Anonymous contributor, let's say,
and the anonymity here is well deserved and well earned.
You need to dedicate a segment on the next episode to that being the absolute worst sword puller in the history of the sword ritual. They needed energy today. That person is certainly important in the city's push for Sundance, but all caps, who gives a flying fuck? You have to find someone better than that. Have to.
Okay, so I wasn't at the game. So can someone bring me up to speed on this, please?
I also missed the sword pull. But apparently it was the president of Film Cincinnati who pulled the sword. And what I have to say about that is twofold. One is it is on the fans to bring the energy. not the sword puller, but also, unless they know that the city has Sundance, it is unacceptable to have the president of Film Cincy pull the sword in a do or die playoff game versus like Matt Miazga.
Right. Matt Miazga or Nick Hagelin would have been perfectly.
Or somebody like who's going to get people up. Like nobody knows who this person is.
Right. The way to do this would be to take whichever actor or director that anybody has heard of that might be related to this effort. Emilio Estevez comes to mind, and have him out there next to the president of the Film Society or whatever.
I'll say this. If we get Sundance, all is forgiven.
If we get Sundance, we didn't need this person to pull the sword. Like the person who needed to pull the sword to get Sundance would be like Robert Redford or something like that. Like to convince
the
him,
CEO.
Yeah. Like why are we having the person who's the head of Film Cincy pull the sword? That's not going to help us get it one way or the other. Yeah. And if it's a thank you for getting the Sundance, then announce that we've gotten it. Yep. And then have that person come out and pull the sword.
It would be great to announce that we've gotten it.
Right.
Or pull the sword, when we can make that announcement in March of next year.
Right. So they make it.
You've got Omar right there. Like you have people who
Alec
can pull the sword.
Has been injured and unseen for a while.
Can pull the sword. Yeah.
Go Hags again. Hags can try round 2. We can try this again in the playoffs.
Hags can pull the sword every day.
Yeah.
Have Pat Noonan do it. That'd be fun.
There's so many options. Honestly, I'm better with Jeff or Dan or somebody in the front office calling their own number.
Jeff Birding pulling the sword would have been dope.
Like I'm okay with one of them calling their own number versus here is this person that works for a local lobbying group.
Jeff's probably like, I'm waiting till MLS Cup to call my own number.
Yeah.
You know what?
No, you can never call your own number.
Don't worry about it, man.
You can never do your own number on that.
Ooh, do we get a sword puller if we are hosting MLS Cup? Like, do you get to treat it? I don't think we do.
Yeah. I don't think we do.
I think you kind of have to do Leagues Cup and treat it like a neutral site, even though you're hosting.
Is there a...
That's okay. We're never going to host a... it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's always going to be one thing or the other.
Is there somebody keeping a list of who's pulled the sword and who hasn't? Or like who's like...
Not me.
Dan McNally is, but
like it would be interesting to go and like take a look and see like, okay, what is the team's record when it is athlete, celebrity, local person, or like make good to a sponsor that their CEO gets to come out and do it?
The children that get to do it.
Has Gary Owen done it?
No. I'm into that though. I mean, we'll get Terry Francona next year, I'm sure. That'll happen.
Cat Williams?
Cat Williams would be electric as a sword puller, like in a full purple suit coming out there.
Could he get it all the way out? Is he tall enough?
No, I don't think he can. You got to put him on a stool.
Yeah, give him a little stool. He walks up with the cane. He like hands the cane off.
Honestly, like Dave Chappelle could do it.
What reaction would Dave Chappelle...
Yellow Springs is close enough.
What reaction would Dave Chappelle get in the building?
Positive.
I think it would be positive, too.
It would be positive.
He's very famous.
And very funny.
Yeah. On SNL one time, he referred
I went to like 5 of his cornfield shows.
I went to one, and it was electric. One of the best experiences I had during that time of the... that weird time in American history.
I went to one where Trevor Noah was like the surprise guest. Surprisingly extremely funny. Another one I went to
stand-up.
Yeah. Another one I went to, Chris Rock was the surprise guest.
Okay, that's awesome.
He was extremely unfunny.
Oh.
And was just like sad about his divorce.
Oh.
And about an hour of it was like him and Dave talking about Chris Rock's like failed marriage.
So you were just present for a live therapy session?
Which wasn't funny, but it ruled.
You got to have that moment.
Yeah, it was so good.
No, I was just gonna say on SNL, back in 2016, Dave Chappelle referred to the shooting of Harambe as happening at his quote unquote local zoo. So I think he claims us. All right.
Very good.
KP asks, and this one feels like a Grayson question, but feel free to take a stab, Chief. Grayson, is the postcast art?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is a work of journalism art?
This is not journalism.
It's not
I'm
journalism.
not saying it isn't, or it is, or whatever.
No, it isn't.
but-
I'm saying it isn't. You don't have to we don't have to hedge on this. It is not
It's
journalism.
art.
Sorry. I want to just ask the question though, is like,
I mean,
a newspaper-
The room
So-
is art. Like this is.
So a work of journalism could be art.
okay.
Like In Cold Blood is also art.
I guess a documentary is riding that line sometimes.
Yeah, but like a gamer is not art.
right. Or
Like
maybe
this
yeah.
this is definitely art.
We got fake names and everything.
I've already said I said this like several episodes ago. That
You
this was
did
art.
actually. Well, KP asked us 3 days ago, so it shows you how much they're paying
Well,
attention.
not a listener, apparently.
Just a Patreon, which honestly, I'd prefer that.
I would rather you be a patron than a listener.
Yes. Scott Griffith asks, this will be our last one for today, and I think this is a really good one. Who do we root for now that you can't root against Messi and Cucho?
A Bane situation.
Yes.
Just as many collapsing stadiums as possible.
Yeah, MLS Cup happens and just like a
So who's
Bane.
left?
Careful.
Who's left right now? Who's still playing?
Um,
I'll say Minnesota United.
All right. So the Western Conference, LAFC is playing Seattle. LA Galaxy is playing Minnesota. And on the East, it's Orlando and Atlanta and NYC FC versus Red Bull.
Yeah.
I hate all of these teams on the East, so it's got to be somebody out of the West.
I'm going with Minnesota.
Minnesota's lovable.
I'm going to go LAFC.
You would.
That
Because maximum
unhappiness for
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
else. This is the maximum amount of
Yeah.
unhappiness for everyone. Everyone will be
because they've
mad.
done it recently. They're expected to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
New York Red Bull might be maximum unhappiness.
No, but like
I'm unhappy if New York Red
I'm
Bull
unhappy.
win.
That's making me more unhappy than other people. Whereas
but think about
LA
it this way. New York Red Bulls have the fewest number of fans. So you're actually
No, I don't-
minimizing
no,
the
but
amount of happiness.
I'm unhappy. Like I'm with Chief. I'm unhappy if any of these East teams win.
because that means that should have been us.
It should have
we
been
should.
it
yeah.
should have been us. Second of all, I hate all these teams with a passion. Like I hate the New York teams. I hate Atlanta. I hate Orlando.
I hate Orlando as a city too. Like it's just chain
Yeah,
restaurants and depression. LAFC is the right answer here.
I
because-
do like LA as a city.
just in LA. LA's okay. I vibe with
Yeah.
LA.
I think Galaxy is going to win. I
do think so.
I'm okay with Galaxy winning too. Like that, one of the LA teams winning. That's good. Like that's good for the brand. That's good for business. That's good for MLS.
I
It
don't want
pisses everyone off. I'm good with that.
I don't want Seattle to win. I've kind of enjoyed like
them sucking.
Seattle's hubris being like kind of stuffed in their faces a bit.
Yeah, Seattle and Portland being down is bringing me a little bit of joy right now.
I'm going with Minnesota.
If it's Seattle Atlanta for the Cup final,
That
Log-
sucks. That
Lagerway's
sucks
got to
hard.
be the king of the world at that point.
You're just basically picking between the two most insufferable fan bases in MLS.
I'll go with Atlanta in that case, but
Yeah.
I sometimes have this dumb thought. I feel it less this year and with this team more than most, but in a knockout tournament situation, I kind of want the team that knocked me out to do well because I think it retroactively makes your loss look better.
No.
No,
Not at all.
not in this case. No,
Not in this case where, as Grayson pointed out, they held this team scoreless twice and still didn't manage to advance.
Yeah. Also, NYCFC is just like an incredibly unlikable situation. Their
Yeah, I
playing
hate that
surface
team.
sucks. Their ownership sucks. It's
The
just
only
not-
the only benefit to NYCFC winning again would be to see if they actually get a bigger banner this time.
another tiny banner, and then their coach leaves them to go coach Arsenal women.
Yeah.
That would actually be really funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that'll do it for the Patreon questions. But I have one final thing here. Chief, there has been something of a, dare I call it an exodus from X to Blue Sky over the last week. As I'm sure would not take long for people to figure out why. However, one MLS team was over there first before any other team, and that was San Diego FC. Now, San Diego FC are, of course, bitter rivals, has the most bizarre setup here on Blue Sky. I'm going to send you the screen capture here.
Okay.
This is very weird. So this is their profile as it appears on Blue Sky.
What?
It has the tag proud not loud, hashtag woven into one. Proud not loud, which is always good for a sports fan base. And they've got their logo as their profile picture, makes sense. And then a banner image of a Navy helicopter flying over San Jose or San Diego.
So here's the problem with all right, so Blue Sky, cool. Like allegedly, I don't know if I didn't fact check this. Allegedly, they are the number one, or they're in the top 10 for app downloads now. They are higher up on the rankings than the Bird app is currently.
15 million users as of today.
There you go. Yeah, they're the top free app right now on the Apple stores. We're recording this. It's Blue Sky, Threads, and then ChatGPT. So good on them for doing that. Problem with Blue Sky is they have a similar setup and a similar situation to where Twitter used to be, where you can't tell who's who. So on this San Diego thing, do we have any proof whatsoever that that's actually San Diego?
As far as I can tell, it is being followed by enough MLS employees for me to believe this is genuinely them.
But it's also like people are just coming over to Blue Sky with like no idea like what's up, and they're just looking for like, because I don't think FC Cincinnati is on Blue Sky, are they?
Well, there is an account, FC Cincinnati. It is being squatted on right now. So
Right.
I suspect our team has an eye to the future here. A couple of other teams have joined. So
Some fan has just squatted on it.
I
be.
have
There's no
reason to
proof.
believe the team has done this.
Oh, okay, all right. Do I have to start posting on Blue Sky now? Do I have to do this? I think you're all weak if you're leaving X. X is the Thunderdome. Like, if you're not willing to stay in the Thunderdome, I just don't know that you have a place in society.
This is what I've done. I've downloaded an app called Buffer for the Post, and it allows me to post simultaneously in both websites. So that is what I'm choosing to do.
Well, either way, if it is San Diego or it isn't San Diego, go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. I also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati. And like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it. If you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.